I can't control how I'm perceived. All I can do is accept myself. If you just get more secure in that, then really what other people think does not matter at all. I am an alcoholic. What do you think of when I say that? What's your instant reaction? Is it a negative one? Are you thinking of someone who is selfish, impulsive, unable to control themselves, irresponsible? This is just a little thought experiment. I am an alcoholic. I'm not just using this as an example, but to me it is just something that I've come to accept about myself because I have to. It's just who I am and it's uncomfortable. I would much rather not be this way, but this is the way I am, and so it's normal for me. And because I am in recovery, so I'm a sober alcoholic, I am a recovering alcoholic, that makes it a bit easier to admit to, but it's still a contentious label. I see some people wince when I say that, and it got me thinking about how I can't control how I'm perceived. You can't control how you're perceived. All we can do is accept ourselves. And I started thinking about this because I had a conversation recently. Someone made it clear, just in passing, it wasn't like the focus of the conversation, but someone made it clear that they thought that it was something that I should be embarrassed about, or it was something horrible that I should maybe feel some shame around. The energy that they had, and again, this was a little moment, this wasn't like a horrible conversation or them being judgmental, but it was just sort of, for me, a glimpse into their mindset. I was like, oh, they think that it's a shame what's happened to me. And yeah, like in active addiction, it was horrible, but I am now in recovery, and that's a good thing. And their passing judgment, their passing like, oh, that's really awful, couldn't it have been another way, is kind of the implication, or like, if something had been different, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But to me, to say it's a blessing is a bit too far, but it's what's happened. I can't change the past. I am where I am, and I have grown to be secure in this identity. I have accepted myself, and that took a long time. Like, I've known since I was 19 that I was an alcoholic. That's when that thought first popped into my head. I was in denial about that for a bit. So it's not like overnight I'm like, oh, I accept myself. I now do. Like, I don't really care. This person has this view of addiction, clearly, that they think it's a choice, or they think it's just some kind of like life-ruining thing. And don't get me wrong, it is. But for them to have that opinion of me, I was like, but I'm building a new life for myself. Like, this wasn't a bad thing. If anything, I've learned a lot from this experience, and I'm not saying bad things have to happen so that you can learn from them, but I do think that there are experiences that you can have and you can take lessons from them, but it's not like you have to suffer to learn. That's not the point. To me, I'm choosing to look at all of the good things. So the people I've met, the fact that I am more open, the fact that I have learned to ask for help, the fact that I have learned to be more compassionate, I've learned to stand up for myself, I've learned to set boundaries, I've learned about a disease that is pretty common, and hopefully I'm more empathetic about it. I mean, I don't know, sometimes I think it makes me less empathetic because that's for another video. That's another very difficult topic to talk about. Because I surround myself with other people who either accept me as well, so like my family, they clearly also won't be happy about the fact that I've gone through this, but they still love me and accept me, and they're happy that I'm at the stage I'm at now, so I don't feel any judgment from them. I mean, maybe they do think, oh, what a shame, but for me, we'll talk about why addiction happens. It makes sense, and I'm like, this is sort of, it feels like the natural progression of my life for this thing to have developed. So I don't feel any judgment from my family. I've got lots of friends in recovery. I met friends when I went to rehab who I'm still in touch with. It's very normal to hear people say, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, to hear them talk about their addiction. It's the same as people saying like, have you read this book series, or have you seen this thing on Netflix? It's just like something we talk about because it is such a big part of our lives. This interaction with this person, it was suddenly like a glimpse of like, oh, not everyone is like that. Not everyone has this perspective of addiction, either because they haven't lived through it or because they don't know anyone who has it in any kind of depth, so they just have like the stereotypical idea of what an addict or an alcoholic looks like, you know, like Frank Gallagher from Shameless. This was the stereotype I had in my head. Like, I'm not blaming anyone, but it was just very interesting to see that I have this idea of myself, and I'm very, like, I accept myself, and as we said, it's not perfect. I would love to not have gone through the stuff I've gone through, but I can take some good out of it, and I've accepted that. But there are other people who look at me and maybe feel pity or they judge me. That was a weird thing to get a glimpse of. And not in like a mean way, I don't mean judge in a mean way, but just kind of this underlying opinion of like, it didn't have to be this way. But from my perspective, I did mention that we were going to talk a bit about addiction. From my perspective, the way my life panned out, it makes complete sense that this happened. Addiction has a genetic component, and I have it definitely on one side of my family, and I think on the other side of my family. So it makes sense that this was something that was a possibility to happen to me. And also then through circumstances, but also me having this disdain for reality and just feeling very uncomfortable, makes sense to me that I developed an addiction. But also I think I have not met one person, no, that's not true, I have met a few people, but the majority of people, particularly the people I met in rehab, every single person had been through something horrible, something very traumatic in childhood or adolescence. They developed their addiction, well, there's all kind of reasons, I don't want to like simplify it, but it's a way to cope with feeling out of control or feeling so much pain from a particular event. To me, knowing all of that, learning about it, having experience of it myself, I'm not judging anyone for being addicted to anything. I can see like a map, if I map out the last 10 years of my life, I'm like, it all links, it makes sense how bad this got. I get it. But I guess if you don't have that perspective, you're not going to see that. And so I can accept myself because I have all of the facts, and it seems like logical, to be honest, like given everything that happened. I'm like, it makes sense that I ended up here. But for someone else, they're not seeing necessarily all of that, or they're thinking, couldn't there have been another way? And to my mind, no. So if we're talking about like how people perceive you and how you need to accept yourself in terms of this, how I've come to accept myself, an uncomfortable thing that people don't like to acknowledge is that sometimes we don't have any control, or a lot of the time we don't have any control. But I mean, bad things can sometimes happen for no reason. Sometimes there's not an answer or something that could have been done to prevent a bad thing from happening. And so I think if you think about someone is viewing you, judging you for decisions you've made, or the way you acted in a particular situation, maybe you were very reactive, and someone is judging you for that, you can't control how other people perceive you. You are the only one who has the full story, and people are far more likely to try and like rationalize what you're saying, or try and come up with some explanation or some reason as to why that thing wouldn't happen to them or to happen to anyone they love. It's not necessarily about taking like the moral high ground, but it's very easy to see something bad happen to someone else, particularly I think with something like addiction, because there can be then like moral elements of you being a bad person or having no self-control. It can be easy to want to judge that because it makes you feel more comfortable to be like, that couldn't happen to me or someone I love, it must be because they're a bad person or because they can't handle their emotions. It's a way of trying to control your fear of bad things happening. Like I said, it makes complete sense that I developed my addiction. I don't think there could have necessarily been anything to stop it. If anything, I think I needed to reach rock bottom to be able to be like, oh, I have to change now. Anyone who's looking at my situation, or if you're going through something where you feel like people don't get it, it's easy for them to be like, oh, why didn't you stop this, or why didn't this happen to prevent it? But it's like, I kind of needed to go that far. I don't know. It's very difficult to talk about. It was just interesting how in this moment I suddenly realised what this person thought of me. Or again, it wasn't like a malicious thing, it wasn't like they were looking down on me, but I suddenly got like a glimpse into, like, I live in this paradigm of like addiction is terrible, but there is possibility for recovery, it's not anyone's fault. And they clearly are in a different kind of, not reality, but they clearly have a different worldview that means like, she could have stopped this, or, you know, it's a shame, but like, why didn't anyone do anything? And it's like, this is a disease and it's gonna like progress, and the person who's in it doesn't always want help, and you can't force anyone to do anything. And I guess maybe I just got too comfortable talking about recovery and being around other people with recovery, and it's just very normal for me, which I think it has to be, because what's the alternative? How much effort are you putting into your recovery? You put all this effort into drinking or using, you need to put the same into your recovery, otherwise it's not gonna last, because you're not balanced then. You centered your life before around your substance. Like, you need to center your life now around recovery, or else you're gonna have the same behaviors just without the substance, and then gradually it's gonna deteriorate and you're gonna pick up again. So to me, it makes complete sense to accept who I am and really like lean into it and embrace it. But to other people, I guess maybe they are like, oh, that's really sad. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is sad, but what's more sad? The more sad thing would be me to deny that this is who I am, to think that I can still drink like a normal person, really hurt myself in the process because I'm refusing to accept who I am. So it's difficult to come to a point where you realize that other people are going to perceive you in a way that doesn't match up to your reality and to what you actually think of the situation. If you are secure enough in yourself and in your identity, it kind of doesn't matter. I know I'm making a whole video about this, talking about this topic, but I just thought it was interesting. I don't care that they said this. It was just a moment, right, where I suddenly got an idea of what they thought. I then felt it for a second. I felt that like judgment or that kind of like creeping feeling of shame, like, oh, am I actually a really terrible person? I felt that, and then all of this other stuff came in, all of like the recovery stuff. This just knowing, as I said, I know when I was 19, there's nothing wrong with me here. I know that I'm doing the right thing in this situation. I don't have to let their opinion affect me. Like, they are gonna think whatever they want, but I know, like I know who I am and I can accept who I am, and I don't have to care what they think. I can't control how they think. I can't control how I'm perceived, but I can accept myself and be secure in my identity. I have thought about it a lot to make this video, but I didn't let that feeling of shame, I felt it for a moment, and then it was sort of all just like washed away because I was like, well, who am I? Like, I know this is who I am, and me fighting it is going to be more dangerous than me accepting it. So I know sometimes we have things about ourselves which are hard to accept, or situations we've been in, reactions that we have to things that are difficult to accept, and they will cause other people to have a certain opinion of us. But if you can get to a point where you understand yourself so well, and maybe if you look at the alternative and be like, okay, if I pretended I wasn't this, how would my life be? That can help, because it's like, oh no, I couldn't do that. This is who I am. If you just get more secure in that, then really what other people think does not matter at all. I can't control how I'm perceived. All I can do is accept myself, and it's really freeing, because then it switches it around where they think, oh, it's such a shame what happened to her. Instead, I've swapped it in my head and I'm like, it's such a shame that they can't see what I've been able to do with this. It's such a shame that they don't see all of the good that has been able to come out of this situation. It's a shame that they can't see that something bad can lead to something good. Such a big change can happen in someone. That to me is more of a shame, that they're stuck in this like fear-based paradigm where bad things only happen to people who deserve it, or bad things don't happen if you can control the situation enough. That to me is more of a shame than them looking at me and perceiving me or my situation in a particular way, because I'm just have so much acceptance. You can lean into who you are. It's much better to embrace who you are and accept yourself than try and run away from it. Once I accept myself, those other people's opinions don't matter. So hopefully once you accept yourself, you will come to realise that those other people's opinions don't matter. You can't control how you're perceived. So I hope this video has inspired you or encouraged you if you're feeling like the weight of having other people judge you or perceive you for a particular thing. If you enjoyed this video, I will leave on the screen my video, Stop Trying to Get Everyone to Understand You, because we deal with some similar ideas in there about how to stop like explaining yourself to people who are just not going to get it. Like I talked about this person who has a very different idea of addiction to me. This person is probably never gonna get it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more from me. God bless, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.